Hello guys and welcome to this tutorial about how to do a IK foot. Okay, so the problem we're going to solve here is when the character is on a tilted surface, we want to make sure that the foot are actually landing on the surface underneath. At the moment you can see how it is just floating there. I think this is a good example here. You can see the front foot is just there. Right, it would be better if the foot is actually on the ground, right? The problem is how and what do we do, right? Let me give you a quick draw over on what we're trying to achieve. So basically, we're trying to trace down from the foot to the bottom, right? And until it hits something, and then that distance, right? And then we find that distance, we'll move the hip down that much first, and then we also make sure the foot here is on that ground, and this foot will actually have to go up. So that it's actually standing correctly, right? So there's a bunch of movements we have to do, and they're all going to be based on a tracing, right, from these two legs or 2 foot down to the underneath surface. Okay. Since the introduction of the control rig of Unreal Engine 5, we can actually achieve that with the control rig. So let's take a look at that. What we're going to do here is right-click on the skeletal mesh, and by the way, this is the face skeletal mesh from the Paragon asset. They're all free. Okay, I'm going to right-click here and then create a control rig. Okay, I'm going to call this guy CR control rig IK foot, and double-click to open it. And compile and save it. Okay, so this control rig is Unreal's new way of setting up controllers for a already established skeletal mesh. Things like IK and FK controllers. So let me show you one thing that's really cool. You can select any joint, right? You can right click on it and then new control. That will make a controller there, right? And then you can shift P to unparent that control after selecting it, and then you can change the control's shape to be in the details, and then shape to be a circle, right? You can change its shape transform to be twice as big, and you can rotate on the Y 90 degree, and you got that controller. Like a generic AFK controller, but it doesn't really do anything unless you use it. You actually set up some coding here. So what you need to do is drag it out and say get control, right? So get the transform of the control basically, and then you find the elbow joint, drag it over, and you can say set bone and connect that execute to the execute context, and then transform to value here. Basically, what we're saying is that the transform of the control now controls the transform of the bone. And if you rotate it, you can see now it's doing a simple FK setup. And this control can be then used in the viewport to create animations. So if you just go and drag it in there, you can see how it's going to create a sequencer. And you can start animating this by just using S to keyframe, and then a few frames later, keyframe again. You got that animation. All right, so this is basically a way to set up body mechanic rigs, right? Very straightforward. Let me delete that and delete that sequence as well. Okay, alrighty. So with that being explained, then we can use this system to actually set up an IK system. Let me delete everything here. Now let me also show you how it's eventually being used, so it does make sense when we're building it. So let's open the. Let me also delete that control because we don't need that. Let me open the skeletal mesh here and go to the animation blueprint. And you can see that we have all the basic setup. There was a IK actually in there, but that one is outdated, doesn't really work anymore. All right, so I want to try to do our own with the new system. Okay. So our idea here is that to apply our control IK rig here. So we can create an IK rig. Okay, not IK rig, sorry, control rig. Control rig. And you can actually insert an control rig between the full body result and the output. So just before you lead output, right, lead into the final pose. And then you can go to the details panel and change the control rig class to be our CR IK foot. and compile and save. Now, because our CRIK foot doesn't really have any content, this just pass through without any alternation. But think of this as almost the same as a animation montage, right? But this is not montaging any pre-built animation on it, but montage it with logic, right? With coding to modify or offset certain joints, right? Whatever you do there will alter the position of the joints after the animation poses, right? So you can also just double click here to go into the CRIK foot, right? And again, whatever logic we set up in here will be in fact the final pose. Okay. Again, that's after all the animations are already played. Another thing I wanted to point out here is that the setup of the hierarchy of the Paragon characters, or basically Unreal Engine style characters. First of all, you have a root joint. That one is actually quite useful because it's going to be telling you where the character should be. You can use that one's transform to do root motion as well. Okay. And also you can see how we do have the root and the pelvis, but we have two additional ones, and they're called IK foot and IK hand. And then underneath them, you do see the IK foot left and right and IK hand left and right. These things are just out of the hierarchy transforms that we can use to reference where the foot or hands are. And by that, what I mean is if you go to the preview and then look for the change the preview control from default to use specific animation, and let's just look for the jog one, okay, and then jog forward. You can see they are actually just playing and following the original wrists and the original ankle, just like the normal ankle and wrist joint, right? So there's nothing more than referencing positions for us to know where they are, and we can offset them and use them to drive the original leg and arm in the IK way. Okay, you'll see that in a bit. So your rig should have that set up to make this work. Okay. Yeah, so it's 7 minutes already. I'm going to pause the video now and I'm going to jump into the next section that we actually start setting up the IK. All right, see you guys next time.